All right, welcome back everyone, and thank you so much for joining us after lunch. I know it's always tough to come back after lunch, so we will be getting started promptly. So today's, or this afternoon session rather, will be with Bill Stark from Franklin and Marshall College, and he's going to be talking with us about the Facilities app, along with AJ Oetman from the web checkout team. So just as a quick reminder, this call is being recorded. So for audio quality, everyone is muted, but please be sure to use that Zoom chat feature if you have any questions or want to discuss amongst everyone that's on this call today. So with that, AJ, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brittany. Well, as I mentioned while everyone was coming in, I had the privilege this year to actually visit Bill at his center that's in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And here on screen, you can just see some fast facts about Franklin and Marshall. And Bill was kind enough to volunteer, be willing to, and we asked him just to present some about his checkout center, and more specifically, his facilities center, which we call it facilities because this is where you can track physical keys to unlock equipment, unlock rooms, and unlock all location spaces. Now, Bill, just to better understand your role at F&M, could you tell us about your role and how many years you've been at the college?
Sure, no problem. Hello, everybody. So my role at the college, I am the assistant director of facilities. My main job is to look out after every building, take care of it, maintain it, work with a group of my fellow workers. We have about 81 buildings on campus. We have about 1.6 million square feet that we take care of. Our team size our total team is about 35 people. We have 23 trades people that we work with. And specifically in this department, in our key shop, Craig is our main locksmith. He is unable to be here because of vacation. Craig roughly takes care of 40,000 keys that we take care of on campus. So that's kind of a little bit about us. And I've been here a total of 29 years. I just started my 29th year. So it's a fantastic place to work.
That's awesome, Bill. And Bill, I know we talked about some when I visited your center, kind of the seasonality of what you manage. Could you tell us, what type of keys you tend to give people, say at the start of the fall semester, versus what types of keys you circulate during the summer or, holiday breaks?
Yep. So of course we're student driven. So in the fall, late July, August, we start getting nervous because we have to pack roughly about 2,400 keys that we prep for students that are incoming. So we have that, and we have throughout all the season, we have staff, faculty and professional staff that come and go that we'll give keys to. When the students are here, the students go and work in different departments throughout the college. And of course, they need more keys then. So we are constantly addressing keys all the time. We have all kinds of, padlocks. We have locked up cabinets, you name it, we take care of it. So we are quite busy always preparing and getting keys ready to give out to students and professional staff and faculty throughout the campus.
Awesome. And I'm just going to switch screens to some facility app highlights because I think this dovetails into why you went with web checkout to solve this. So everybody's aware, Franklin and Marshall has used our software for longer than facilities existed, but Bill reached out to us specifically for us in creating this application to solve their particular use case and is the first institution to pilot it. So Bill, can you just talk to us about what was your old system like and why did you choose to switch to web checkout?
Sure. Our old system was built in-house by our IT team. It took a lot to keep that system up and running. And so we ran with that system probably about, I guess, in maybe 5 to 8 years with the old system, and started having all kinds of problems. And, as everybody knows, that our workforce is kind of shrinking, and the IT just didn't have the time and energy to upkeep that system. So we went out to try to find something off the shelf that would work for us. And we went out to a bunch of different groups, and web checkout seemed to be the right fit, what we needed. It was exciting to work with everybody to help build the system and continue on that process of making things better for both of us. And so that's how we ended up with the new system. And it's been it's working really well for us.
Awesome, which is so good to hear, Bill. And as people will see on the slide, so one thing we're going to talk about too today, so many of our clients on the call, you use various forms of integration. Many of you likely integrate your people records, so you have your student rosters automatically import into web checkout, or you may use groups to integrate. So if you have restricted equipment or restricted centers, you may automatically grant access to that using integration. Well, what's really interesting with Franklin and Marshall is they've also integrated their key center, and specifically they're using Adirondack. So Bill, when you come in the morning, what does that enable you to do? Like when you're first looking at your screen, are you able to quickly tell who is needing keys for the day?
Yeah, we have a system that they call into our SRC, which is our kind of command center. Those work orders are generated for us, and then we go ahead and we take, and it'll tell us where they need keys for. So we get that information, and then we plug that into the web checkout. That system also works well as our incoming class of 2022 will show up automatically in our system through the banner interface, and it'll come into the web checkout, and it lists all of our incoming students as well as all the upper class. So that kind of places it in a spot in web checkout that we can go in, and the web checkout generates the hook numbers, and we just basically kind of plug in a thing that we call sequence numbers into the system, and it makes it a nice, easy to assign those keys out to the students.
Awesome. And as people may be just glancing at some of these points too, so also talking about enforcing accountability and decreasing, key loss, and also ensuring security. I know whenever I think about keys, I frequently think about security, because this is giving access to dorm rooms, to classrooms, to lots of sensitive areas around your campus. Bill, do you frequently have to re-key locks for any type of security issue, or is that a fairly rare event?
No, that happens from time to time. We typically, if a student or somebody loses keys off campus that aren't around, maybe far away, we will sometimes we'll address it and do a full recom. Any key that's lost on campus, especially in a res hall or any computer classroom, we automatically go in and we do a full recom of all locks within the space. So we can kind of cycle out that, bring in the next one, and that way we're not worrying about that key being like a ghost key out there that's going to open any door on campus. So we do that. We take security, we pay attention to it. We make sure that we do our part and protect all the faculty and professional staff and students that are on campus.
Awesome. Yeah, and I bring that up because part of the development with this app is not only to track exactly who has the key, what the key sequence is, but also giving the ability to re-key a hook. So if there's a security breach, being able to, fully say, okay, all the keys on this hook, we're re-keying. Anyway, well, Bill, I know that you have a really interesting center where you not only cut keys, but you also track them and organize them. So Bill has offered to give just a brief tour of his facility. I know we have a few other clients that have been recent adopters of this, or ones that are considering. So just so that all of you can get a glance at what an actual key facility looks like. And so that way, if you are managing one, you may have a better understanding, or if you know of any department on campus that may be currently managing physical keys and could absolutely use software like this to better do that. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my share. And Bill, if you want to switch over to your iPad and go ahead and give us a tour of your center.
Okay, so this is our key shop where we have all our keys for on campus. All these cabinets that you see in front of me are all 4,790 keys, hook numbers that we have on campus. And here we have we stamp all our keys manually, and we cut keys, and all our keys that we have back there in the back of the space is a bunch of hardware that we store on campus, pinning kits. All these keys here on the wall are for padlocks, cars, you name it. Actually, these envelopes that you see kind of straight ahead are for our incoming students. We're starting to pack their keys.
And Bill, sorry to
Yes.
interrupt.
Nope.
When you said pinning, you also build the locks for the keys. Is that correct?
That's correct. We build all our locks. We master key our locks. You can kind of peek in there. These are the pins that actually go in the core of the cylinders. So we pin our own locks. We're pretty much a full service lock shop here. And again, these cases over here are all our res hall keys, just for easy grab. So we're not grabbing out of the big box. Years ago, we had a book that we called our Bible. And this book here has all our hooks and keys on campus all over the place. And we live by this book. We wrote notes in it, and you name it. So we've come a long way. Web checkout has helped us a lot. Sorry about going so fast there.
No, you're good. Bill, I was curious, just before we leave this view, when you have hooks organized, what does that look like in your center? So if you have keys that sit on hooks, what do those actually look like?
So I'm just going to open one of these drawers up. So they kind of look like this. Okay. So you can see each key has a number, and with on that number, the main key, the master key that's uncut, the cut came from the factory, whatnot, is there. And then we also have that there tells us what sequence is next, or that we've used. That way we know when we stamp the key that we are stamping the correct number and the next sequence in line. So you can imagine there's quite a few drawers filled, and they're all solid packed with keys. So that's basically that's how we store our keys.
Awesome. And so that everybody on the call is aware, the hook is essentially the same type of key, right? They're all cut in a similar fashion, but then the sequence is that individual key. So if I have a hook that unlocks dormitory 101, there may be 3 keys for that. And each of those 3 keys will have a different sequence number to identify exactly which key it is. So you're keeping track of exactly all of your keys.
Yep.
Well, we of course also want to see this process in web checkout. I know Bill ended at the main computer that Craig, who also works in the facility center, uses to check in and out keys. So Bill, if you don't mind, on your computer screen, Bill's just going to share with us his facilities app and walk us through some of the basic functionality. For those of you that were at our user symposium last year, you may remember that I showcased this on our test instance, but I think it's really helpful to see it on an actual client instance and see it with their data on it. So Bill's right now looking at the home screen of the facilities app. I will note that once you have a facilities app, only operators with the managed keys capability can access it. So for any of you that are worried about security in terms of your standard, maybe student workers not having access to this, we've ensured that unless you have that capability, you're not going to see what Bill is showcasing to us today. Okay, so Bill, yeah, just walk us through what are some of these fields on facilities and how do you use them?
Okay, so it's really well set up. It's nice and easy to flow through, makes a nice flow. Basically, the hook is basically every hook that we have on campus. So starting with one, the whole way up to the 4,900 keys that we have. Basically the hook is, equals the door for me. So if it's like AJ said, door 101 is, hook 10, whatever. So basically all our hook information is there. If we click on a hook, it gives you more definition about the hook, tells you the pinning and everything on the hook, who has keys, and so on and so forth. So the hook is a lot of information that helps us understand what each hook is for. And then we have keys, which is, we could look up any key right here. We have a drop-down menu if we want to be specific on what kind of keys we're looking for. There's a one here waiting for pickup, which basically when our students start, or when the information's loaded into the system for all the new incoming students, they would be in here and they would be all in line and ready for us to go look at. So you can select, put a key in, look it up that way. That's keys. Sorry about that. Persons, we can look up persons. I'm sorry, this is the spot where if our new incoming students were here, this pending hook assignments, if I would hit search, it would generate all our students. And it would have the hook number associated with them. And we would just have to add the sequence number to each one of those keys as we went along. And then,
I just interject to you that what you're viewing is a good thing, and that it's showing that Bill's integration is working because they're right now on their summer session. Nobody's needing to check out keys today. And so at the end of today's call, I will show on my test instance just what that would look like. But of course, in Bill's case, because his integration is keeping that list up to date daily, for today, they don't need to hand out any keys.
Yep. Locations is all of our buildings on campus. Buildings and rooms, we got tons of space. So we can search for a specific location, or we can have an all or multiple. That's a real nice feature to get to a building. If you want to look and see what door 102 is, you can look it up pretty quick. Then we have outgoing keys, which I'm going to go ahead and assign myself a key just so you can look at it. Sorry about that. Hold on one second.
Right now, Bill is showing us, if someone comes in, how you can check out a key to them on the spot. So if they don't have a pending key to pick up, right? They've just come in, they're getting it at the desk. This is a way where you can also give it to them right at the desk. And then of course, we'll also show you, if you do have integration, how you can see all of the people who are waiting on keys right at the start of the day. Awesome.
So this basically, I'm going to assign a key and I'm just going to assign it to myself. But basically when my key tab comes up, it lists all the keys that I currently have. So if you look, it'll tell you if there's any due back dates that I have to have that key back, or just basically for each person. So if I wanted to assign myself a key, I'm just going to grab one that I have right here in front of me. I'm going to do that, and then the sequence. So the sequence number is what ties to a specific person. So there could be, hook number 2863, there could be 30, 40, 100 of those things, but each one of those specific sequence numbers matches up to the person. See. So I'm going to assign that to myself, and I'm going to set it. And then it'll tell you up top, checkout is confirmed. And if you look in my list here, it should be down here, right here it is. So it's set it in place. And then if I wanted to return that key, There's a couple ways that I could do that. I could do it right here. There's an easy tab that I could just click. I could get down to the bottom and return it. Or I can go in another way, which will be kind of nice to show you. This is incoming keys. So I could put this number in. 63. This screen's extremely handy when all the student keys come back in big buckets and we have to return all these keys. So we hit that and return, and it tells you right there what key was returned. It gives you the location, which is great because our student keys come back in, like I said, like big 5-gallon buckets, because we gather them out of a bunch of key drop boxes across campus, and we can mark each key so we know where it goes back when we put it away. So that's pretty much the function through the web checkout on our facilities app system right there. So AJ.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bill. I clap, but I don't want to blow up my speaker for everyone. So if everyone just wants to digitally clap on your chat screen, thank you so much, Bill, for showing us your facility, as well as showing us how you check in and out keys in your application. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take the share now. So I'm just going to reshare my screen. All right. Okay. And here we go. All right, hopefully everybody can see a facilities app screen. So Bill was kind enough to show us, of course, his general circulation. If someone comes to his desk, how he can hand them a key if they need one. But I wanted to show you that integration functionality, which, as we mentioned, right now it's summer. On this day, F&M doesn't have a bunch of keys to hand out. But on a typical day, if Bill or Craig or someone else at their facility were to log in, they'll see by this people tab a number indicating how many people are waiting on keys or have keys available where they can come in and check them out. Now, Bill, at the beginning of your school year, about how big is this number?
That number is pretty huge. That could be up probably about 2,400 people would be in that tab right there.
Gotcha.
Yep. So it's pretty big. Not as big as a lot of big schools, but big for us.
Absolutely. So if I click on this people tab, and you'll notice that the status pending hook reservations. If I just hit find, it'll populate that list. So what this means is I can look through the list of everybody who's expecting, or in Bill's case, where there may be 2,500 of these. When they come in, you can also search for the person using their username or using their barcode to find that record. And then by clicking on that record, it will pull them up and you'll see what location they have access to. So as part of their integration, this list is showing not only who's expecting a key, but to where, right? So who is getting access to a key and where is that location? So in this case, Luke Dane, is getting access to the Black Labs 101 and on hook 1001. So if I were to go back to that big box Bill showed, I'd look through my list of hooks, and on hook 1001, there may be 3, there may be 5 keys that are all cut in the same way. But the sequence number is going to tell me exactly which key it is. I could put in a sequence number and hit assigned, and then that key is now ready to be picked up. Okay. All right. And if I were to just select this box, let's say they come to my desk, I can then hit pick up because they have now picked up. In Bill's case, it's like a little envelope that'll have the key in it, right? So once I've selected a sequence number, so that specific key, I put it in my envelope. When they come to the desk and pick it up, you just hit pick up. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, that system works great for when the students do come, we actually hand the keys out to the students. So as they come to us and come to check in, we just automatically check that box. It assigns that information into the system. It sends the student an email and says that you have picked this key up. This key is now yours. It reminds them that there's a due date on basically May 15th for us. And so it's an awesome, just double check. We also get an email confirming that all that took place. So that's a great feature in the system as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for mentioning that, Bill. And again, thank you for showing us the basic functionality of facilities. Now, of course, many of you may remember when I presented this a year ago, but we want to show you where facilities is headed. The theme of this user symposium is grow. So what are you going to see coming out this fall for those that are interested in using web checkout to manage keys? I'm going to give you a taste of our upcoming version as facilities application. So right now you're looking at what will be coming out in August. That's still in a beta version, so we're still testing this. But you're going to be able to see some of the functionality that F&M has also spearheaded. So you'll notice on this new version, on the left-hand pane, we have all of the icons. So you can quickly navigate to them on this left-hand pane rather than before having to click on the sandwich icon and then go to one of these menus. Now I'm going to go into our hooks menu. All right. And you'll notice that now I've gone to what we call a key hook find page. For those of you that have been using web checkout frequently, and I know some of the features people mentioned at our earlier session today were that they like the find screens. Throughout web checkout, we have a number of find screens where you can pull reports for your resources, for your usage, for your patrons. And all of these reports, you can add search terms to narrow your search, as well as result columns. So that way you're specifying what data you want to export or just to see in the application. Well, when we first built facilities, as I mentioned, operators have to have the managed keys capability to access it for security reasons. What we didn't want to happen is for, say, a standard operator or student worker to get sensitive key information that could enable them to, say, cut a key for a room that they shouldn't have access to. And so because of that, key cut and keyway, those values that would enable you to cut a new key, will not go over to the main web checkout application. You can only view that in the facilities app as part of a security measure. Well, one thing Bill brought to our attention is while that security is helpful, there's many reports that he and Craig need for their workflow where they need that key cut and keyway and that key sequence information in a report. So in our upcoming version, we've added those reports to the facilities app. So right now I'm looking at this hook find page, and you'll notice that I could enter, say, a hook number here or an equipment code to just quickly search for a specific hook, right? I can also, if I scroll down, there's what we call query terms. So for example, I can narrow my search results based on these query terms. For example, if I'm looking for a specific key cut, I could enter that information and look for only keys that have that specific key cut, right? Additionally, for those of you that manage multiple organizations, if I were to put in an organization here, it would only then pull keys in my example for my web co-production center, right? Additionally, if I scroll down, many of you familiar with all of our find screens will be familiar with result columns. If I were to add a result column, like, for example, I could add manufacturer, suddenly now the manufacturer is also going to pull up on this report. In addition to these included values like hook number, key type, equipment code, child locations, now I've also added manufacturer. And I, of course, can get rid of these values by clicking on them in the included list and putting them back in excluded. All right. I'm going to go ahead and put manufacturer back. All right. And I'm also, actually, I'm just going to add some notes instead. Okay. Now that I've adjusted my search results, I'm going to hit find. All right. And right now, it looks like I got too specific. So I'm going to hit find again. And because we're still testing, it's not pulling a big result. But if it were to pull up these values, I can hit export as, export importable, and I can actually download this spreadsheet so I can print it or save it for my records. And that way, in Bill's use case, you have that information available. Awesome. Well, that concludes going over some of our new information with the facilities applications or upcoming August release. We do want to open the floor for questions, but before we do that, part of today's goal has just been engaging with you, the community that's on these calls. I'd like to see, just by, if you can put a thumbs up in chat, how many of you either are currently using the facilities app or know of a department at your institution that might be interested in using this software to help them track the physical keys that they loan out. Okay, I see one thumbs up. I know not everybody tracks keys. And there are a couple of my clients that just came on board, but due to their time zone, they're not on today. It looks like a couple. Okay, fantastic. Well, now I'd like to open the floor for any questions. So what questions do you have for myself or for Bill today? Looks like not a lot of questions. Great, looks like not too many, which is perfectly fine. I will just make a couple notes too while we're here, that if I go back to my other facilities app, I do just want to note what we mentioned earlier, and that if you have, say, a hook, let's say if I go to hook 10, and there is any type of security breach, we have the functionality where if I click these three dots, I can select rekey hook. And what that's going to do is it's going to enable me to change the key cut and keyway. So if all of the keys on that hook are now compromised, you can just rekey it in mass very quickly, rather than having to go to each individual key. You can just rekey the whole hook. So we also have that functionality, which is very helpful. All right, great. Well, I think we've ended this session a little bit early, which is not a bad thing. So we know how busy you all are. I'm going to go back to our presentation, and we're just going to talk about what is upcoming next.
Yep, I can grab the screen share from you, AJ.
Perfect.
Give me one moment. All right, you folks should see my screen now. So we will be getting started with our next session at 3:00 p.m. Central Time. So while we do have a few moments until our next session, are there any questions that went unanswered from our morning session? I know we had a lot of questions about barcode scanners and barcoding items. Were there any other questions that you all wanted to ask earlier that we didn't have a chance to discuss during our morning session? Oh, Romeo, it looks like you are raising your hand. Feel free. Can you unmute yourself? Let me see if I can help you out.
Move my microphone in front of my mouth. There we go.
There you go. We are in business.
All right. So Jeannie was showing us the custom person ID. Is that the right terminology?
Mm-hmm.
Is that an importable, or like, do we create a custom?
Yes, so let me
Uh,
go ahead. I am in our current version of web checkout right now. This is not the August 2022 release, so I
Okay.
can't show you the person custom unique identifier. However, you will be able to add unique identifiers. Actually, you can add the unique identifier in the current version. I misspoke. So
Oh, okay.
under admin, global settings, and hopefully you folks are seeing web checkout.
Yep.
We have our custom properties tab. And this is actually one of my favorite features because this is where you can add custom properties or fields into the application. And you'll see that I have a lot. So this is our training instance. So we've made a ton of different custom properties. And you can add custom properties to nearly every detail screen in web checkout. So the patron detail screen being the one Jeannie spoke about this morning. You could also add custom properties to allocations in patron portal, resources and types, etc. And the custom property that Jeannie was specifically referring to is a person custom unique identifier. All right, so if I click on new custom property, we'll see a modal that will appear now. And you'll see me adjusting a few different fields. So we're going to first select where this new custom property is for. If we want to add in one of those person unique identifiers, we would select the person option. The type of field we would want to use is unique ID. This is how that requires that the information provided in that field is a unique identifier. So just like a person ID or a barcode would be unique. Then you would include the label, which is the name of your field. So maybe we are calling this secondary barcode. I'm not very creative today. You could include an import name. This is required, and usually I just like to match the label so it's easy to identify in case you're going to be importing this information or using it within your patron integration. And then these final two options include in result columns or search terms. This adds these fields at this property as either a result column or a search term on that patron find screen. All right, now once you select submit, you can see that it's added in our list. However, at this point, you would need to schedule a restart. We typically recommend scheduling that to occur overnight. Does that help to answer your question?
That answers it perfectly. I thought we were going to have to get this like campus-wide agreement that everyone's okay with getting rid of barcodes, and then we can swap it out with the RFID. And now we could just add it in, right? And if people, it totally solves the whole problem. It's amazing. Thank you.
Got it. Perfect. It looks like we have some other questions in the chat. It looks like Paul Brown, you have your hand raised.
Thanks, Brittany. Yeah, one of the things I just kind of want to throw out there for discussion is one of the things we've been challenged with to try to, think outside the box and evolve a little bit is patron self-checkout. And kind of the idea is if we had a monitored room where we had some assets that people could get 24/7 to help, give more flexibility, help solve problems, adapters or battery chargers, things like that. Is anybody else thinking about that in their operations? It'd be interesting to kind of hear.
That's a great question. So you're interested, it sounds like, in having the patron physically check out the gear to themselves, like pick it up, scan it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of like a self-checkout at the grocery store, essentially.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Paul, is this gear stuff that can auto circulate? So for example, like a location space that doesn't require them to pick up a key, they can just walk into it, but you want to be aware who's using it? Or does this gear or items, do operators have to like pre-pack in any way?
Yeah, I don't know if we'd necessarily do very complex, like an Area Alexa or something like that. We'd sort of stay away from that. But additional batteries, chargers, grip equipment. Like I need an extra C-stand. I need an extra Quacker clamp, Mayfair, whatever. Things that help support people whatever they have. Apple, laptop power supplies, stuff like that. And then it wouldn't be pre-reserved. It's just, I need this now. Let me get it. Maybe the equipment center's not open, and it gives flexibility and helps them get what they need quickly. The app as it stands currently just isn't really set up for users to do their own checkouts, but it's something we've been thinking about.
Yeah, the reason I asked that is if you do have items that say you could set to auto circulate, meaning at this, when a user goes in a patron portal and they say, I'm reserving it at 1 p.m. and then I'm gonna say return it at 5 p.m., just as an example. If it's set to auto circulate right at that time, it's gonna tell the system it's gone out. However, that does assume that they come in and they actually pick it up, right?
Yeah.
So currently, there isn't a mechanism for them to say we've checked it out. It would just automatically go out unless Brittany or anybody else from Web Checkout, if you have other ideas for possibly how to solve that use case.
Well, there have been a couple of inquiries from that have come up. It obviously has the big warning that it's the honor system, and I think Utah talked to me about it over at Penn State. At one point, they were contemplating just having an area where people walk up, take things, kind of scan it out. They were looking for something like a little kiosk or something where you could just kind of mark it in and out like that. But that kind of requires that you're logged in as you, and I think he was looking for something even more simple than that. It could be done. And Lee's on this call. He would know some of the gotchas on the technology, because we do make certain, we do probably make certain assumptions that you're not thinking about yourself, but it has definitely been brought up before.
Yeah, I would. I had my hand up, so I thought I'd just start talking. The honor system is one side of it, and I think that one of the reasons we haven't pursued this too deeply is that alone, and I think that a lot of probably, I don't know, other people might refer to them as cynical, but we'll say realistic equipment managers know that their students are going to tend to avoid anything they're not forced to do. So if there really is no physical control keeping them from picking that battery up, then you're probably going to find that a decent number of your clientele will just walk in and grab a battery and walk back out again. We did do some research and have put some time into more of a vending machine model, mechanisms that would integrate with something like smart lockers and that sort of thing, which takes that would allow for self-vending, but it takes that honor system component out. So it's something we've thought about. But solving those problems have proven to be a little difficult.
We definitely were during the pandemic, heavily exploring smart lockers. And initially we thought, smart lockers, different sizes, et cetera, et cetera. What we actually stood up and just started trying is some of the smart locker companies offer what they call like a smart room solution, where there's shelving inside, there's cameras, and you enter a code to get in. Well, we kind of just rolled our own by getting a space, putting key card access, restricting users who go in there, having logs, but also having cameras in the space. And then we pre-stage orders for there to get them out of our space and let the user know, hey, come pick it up anytime. And when you're done, if it's after hours, return it there at any time. So we've got a good sense on that. And I think what we learned from a larger prep space, essentially, or staging space, is, the smaller lockers really have limited use because a lot of what we're dealing with is larger orders that just aren't going to fit in those smaller containers easily. Whereas if we can put it on a cart and have it ready to go, it makes it easier for us and the users. So it's definitely something we're exploring and trying to find solutions to.
The only thing I can think of with that might be kind of a hybrid solution, or something that would be, maybe it might be a little more hands-on than you're looking for, but I mean, you could have them reserve it, right? And then if they put when they're going to pick it up, you know, you can go ahead, and you may have already said this, maybe I just missed it, but just move it into that other space, you know, and like, so if they reserve it for a time that you're closed, then you say, okay, well, they're gonna pick this up tonight, you know, and so we'll just put it in this space for them to come pick up. And so it's like there's some accountability there already because they have to reserve it and they have it, you know, and that. But then I guess you run into other problems with, you know, who's accessing that space still, and how do you control people from going at it? That's just be some food for thought, though.
I don't think we want to allow them to walk up and grab high value items necessarily at will, but those extra things you need, like a photographer working on a stage, they have their core package, but then they go, oh man, I need more sandbags, I need more of this, I need more of that, and be able to get those quickly or after hours is kind of one of the key requests we're looking at.
Sorry, jumping in, because what you're describing for me sounds like a library book checkout system. Because most libraries, you grab the books you want, you scan it with your library cards, and then you walk away with it. Like, and there are books where you scan it and they say you can't check it out because these are on special reserve. And when you go through the gate, it will beep. So if you can create a space similar to that, I think, I mean, that sounds basically like a library. And I don't personally use patron portals, but I don't know if it is something that you can categorize certain item as lower price item as automatically approved. So you would have a patron portal kiosk where they can check the scan in items themselves, and maybe your staff could go in once a day and just say they are already approved, and we will just like creating a separate checkout system to say like small item checkout centers, and any request going in there is automatically approved, and maybe a staff would just kind of oversee it and say, okay, the person came and went, I'm going to approve the checkout. So it's a delayed process, but maybe that will work.
Thank you, Annie, for that feedback. I greatly appreciate it. As Lee mentioned, it sounds similar to some other use cases we've looked at, such as smart lockers. Thank you so much. All of this feedback does really help. It helps us be able to submit feature requests and just get a better pulse from our users. Were there any other questions about the application today? We will, as Brittany mentioned earlier, you can see on the screen, start our next session right at 3 p.m. because I know a few other users might be joining right then. But any other questions today about anything related to web checkout?
I do have one question. Hi.
Yeah.
We were in the middle of the quarter when March rolled out, the March update rolled out. So we didn't update ourselves until a couple weeks ago. And we noticed the behavior a little bit different. And I'm not sure it's just specific to our instance or it is a new feature or bug. Basically, we used to be able to select, make changes to a field and click on enter key to save the change. But now we have to go to tab to go to the check mark and then hit enter to save.
Got it. So you used to be able to save by hitting the enter key on your keyboard.
Yes.
And now you're having to like select the checkbox or that super save button. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. I'm unfamiliar with that one, but I'd be happy to follow up with you after our sessions. So it looks like a few others have been running into that. I'd be happy to look into that and follow up after our user symposium.
Yeah, thank you, Annie. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, you see me looking over here. I'm just writing down notes so I do not forget to look these up. All right.
And one thing I'm really excited, just to plug our new community site again, is it's going to be very helpful for if people are seeing a certain behavior, or if they have a request or feature request, to be able to go to that community site and, you know, talk about topic ideas. And also you can, as Jeannie was talking about earlier, thumbs up or thumbs down something. It looks like we have a question from Romeo. Romeo, do you want to just unmute yourself and ask the question?
Perfect. So we just went to the March 2022 version a few weeks ago, and I noticed the resource records have a field for external ID, but I couldn't find any information about it on the portal. So I wondered what's the idea behind that? Because I thought like there's some things that there's some names that we call things, but students don't call them that. Is that like to give it a different name on the portal? Is that the idea?
It's just like a secondary identifier for your resources. So if there's like a different, say, identifier, kind of like asset tag, right? That the school
okay.
requires you to keep
Okay.
on the record.
So it doesn't necessarily show on the portal.
External ID for resources, I do not believe displays on the patron portal, no.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
You got it.
I also want to note, Paul Brown had a great question in chat. If there's a URL for the community site, we will be sharing that with the community, not right at this time. We're just trying to iron out a few more things with the community site, but I'm just going to pop into chat where everyone can join our users list. So that's an email list. We try not to overly bombard it, but that's where we announce when there is, say, a new release out, or if there's a user symposium like this out, and that is where we will be sharing that community site. So I just popped that into chat. So if you're not part of our users list, please click that link, and while you're waiting these 5 minutes, add yourself, so that way you'll get the link to the community site right when we release it. Great question.
Are there any other questions or discussion topics anyone wanted to bring up within the next 5 minutes? All right, we will be getting started promptly at 3:00 p.m. so you folks can get out of here on time today. So we'll get started with our session about RRT bundles and containers at 3 p.m. Central Time. If you haven't already gotten a snack, I'm just plugging the idea. I highly recommend eating a snack during training, especially the final session of the day, to keep your energy levels up. But outside of snacks, does anybody have any other more serious questions about web checkout? Sounds like no.
I'm curious, just, I know we've been doing a lot with the thumbs up feature. Is there anyone on the call today who's already started using our new green lighting module? Are there any thumbs up? I know I have a number of clients using it, but they're overseas. So I don't believe I think they're gonna follow up with the recording.
I think
Awesome.
Mac was on this earlier and he's using it.
Well, I highly recommend be on that users list. I know this fall, as well as in our upcoming versions, we're gonna have a lot of improvements to green lighting. It's a module I know we're really excited about. I'm really excited about. So if you haven't heard yet about green lighting and are curious, please join that users list, because we're gonna be giving out a lot more information on it. It looks like Paul Brown has a question.
Yeah, it just popped in my mind. There was a request from one of our departments, the film department. Is there a way when a repair ticket is created, but only for certain equipment, they can get an email? Because I know there's a way to do it where any ticket's generated, but is there a way to refine it by like root parent type or something like that? Then does that?
Paul, when you say get a ticket, do you mean if there's a resource that's, say, broken and it's part of this type, that a specific operator always gets an email when that type of equipment is broken?
Yeah, that would be the case. Yes, just so they only know about the film stuff, but not like the photo stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think you can do it if you use those automatic ticket assignment rules. So we have rules that will automatically assign tickets to your operators. And then if you have that ticket assigned, emailed, enabled, that will then assign the operators. And with those automatic ticket assignment rules, you can select specific resource type. So if you have one person who should work on your red cameras, you could make it so that that is the one operator that is always assigned to work whenever a ticket's created for your red cameras. Does that make
Awesome.
sense?
Yeah, I'll explore that. If I have any questions, I'll follow up with support. Thank you.
You got it. And we will get started in the next 1 minute. So are there any questions or concerns while we wait to get started? We'll see if anybody joins us right at 3, but we'll get started right on time, just to be mindful of everyone's time. But oh, and it looks like we do have a couple users joining us for our final session of the day. Thank you, folks, for hanging on all day. We do really appreciate the feedback and the participation. All right, we'll be getting started shortly with our final session about our RT bundles and kits. Just take a moment or two, stretch your legs, grab a snack or a drink if you have not yet. This will be a pretty heavy content-rich session, so we'll have a lot to discuss. All right, we're right at 3:00 p.m. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our session, since it looks like we do not have a lot of users joining us. So thank you again, AJ and Bill. You did a really great job, and it was honestly really great to see the background of the facilities app and where Bill actually works with all of these keys. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started talking about improving your user experience with RRT bundles and kits. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our 4th and final session of the day. So we hope you all have really enjoyed your first day of training, and I do hope that you take away a tip or a new feature that will help you and your team. So my name is Brittany Wood, and I will be your host as we explore the many operational benefits of organizing and packaging your inventory with the reservation by resource type module, which is also known as RRT, and the bundles module and containers. So just as a quick reminder to everyone, we all are muted. Well, most people are muted, and for audio quality. But if you have any questions, please use that Zoom chat feature and our team will assist. All right, so we're going to start by reviewing our agenda. So you folks should see the agenda up on the screen right now. If you don't, please let me know. All right, so we're going to start our session by reviewing some web checkout terminology, just to ensure that we are speaking the same language when we talk about web checkout. So we're going to define RRT bundles and containers to make sure you all understand me throughout the next session. Then we're going to discuss RRT and why it may benefit your checkout center. So this will be helpful if you currently use RRT. We'll dive into settings, but also it will be helpful if you currently do not use RRT, because you can see how it's actually used in a checkout center. Next, we'll review bundles and containers and discuss when it is most appropriate to use one over the other. And then finally, we'll take, at the end of our session, we'll take a look at a few special considerations that you all will want to keep in mind when using RRT and bundles. And finally, we'll finish up with a short Q&A session and get you folks out of here on time, right at 4 p.m. so you can eat dinner. All right, so we're going to start first by defining some web checkout terminology. All right, so let's start first with resource and resource type. So resources are our individual pieces of inventory in web checkout. Resources can either be equipment or locations, and they can also include information such as serial numbers, barcodes, or components. Resource types, on the other hand, help you to organize your inventory so that they are easily trackable and accessible to your staff and patrons. And all of your resources must be assigned to a resource type. So let's take a look at some resources and types in web checkout so you can see exactly what I'm talking about with these two key terms. All right, so you should see me navigating now into web checkout, and I am located in the timeline scheduler. Again, let me know if you're not seeing any of this. And I'm going to click on the resource type for lenses, the resource type for EF mount, and the resource type for Canon EF mount 50 millimeter. So each of these clickable categories are our resource types and will allow you to organize your equipment and locations and drill down into more specific subcategories. Additionally, authorization to reserve specific items are managed at the resource type, along with policy settings for finer usage controls. These are both managed at the resource type, which once again are your categories. Now, these individual items nested below the types are our resources. These are what you see right here. These are our resources. So it is essential to understand the difference between resources and types, as they are significant when we discuss RRT, containers, and bundles. All right. Now let's talk about these three terms: RRT, containers, and bundles. RRT stands for reservation by resource type. This module allows resource types to be added to the reservation rather than selecting or reserving a specific resource. We'll discuss a bit later how this can make both the reservation and the pickup process just a bit easier. Containers refer to a set of resources that always circulate together, and most clients refer to these as kits. Bundles refer to a collection of resource types that can be reserved together with a single click. So essentially, both containers and bundles provide ways to circulate items together. However, containers include resources and bundles include resource types. All right. So now that we have reviewed some basic definitions, let's discuss in more depth why you would actually want to use RRT. All right, so one of the top reasons that we recommend using RRT outside of being able to reserve types is to provide a more user-friendly experience within the patron portal. So two key features that I want to highlight today in patron portal include the ability for users to select a simple reserve one of this type button to add items to the cart, and the ability to utilize fallback types when a resource type is completely unavailable within that checkout center. All right, so let's start to take a look at these two key features within Patron Portal. All right, so I'm already logged into Patron Portal, and you're currently looking at a specific resource type. This is the same resource type that we looked at within Web Checkout. Now with RRT, Patron Portal users can select this simple reserve one of this type option in order to reserve an item, rather than having to select from all 10 or a dozen lenses that are assigned to this type. All right, so that means that this patron is no longer responsible for choosing a specific resource that is available within their selected start and end time. Rather, Web Checkout will manage that schedule and ensure that at least one resource of that type is available during the patron's selected start and end times. So we just saw how easy it was to add an item. It's literally the patron drills down to their specific type and they can select reserve one of this type. That's reserving items by type with RRT. So now that we've seen how to reserve items using RRT in the Patron portal, let's update our settings to compare how users would add items without RRT. So reserving by individual resource. All right, so I'm going to navigate back into Web Checkout. and we're navigating to Admin, Checkout Center, and over to our Patron Portal tab to adjust our settings. All right, and we're going to navigate down to our Patron Portal resource selection mode right here. And we're going to adjust our setting from RRT only to individual resources only. All right, so now that I've adjusted my setting, let's navigate back into Patron Portal and create a reservation without RRT. So I'm logging off and logging back in so we can see these changes within Patron Portal. And we'll look at that same resource type within Patron Portal. So we're going to take a look at our lenses, our EF mount lenses, and drill down to our 50mm lens. So you'll notice now that I have to add individual resources to my cart using these add buttons right here for each individual resource. Now you can also view a timeline of availability for each resource prior to adding by clicking on this timeline option. So you can still view availability prior to adding as well. Let's add another item just for fun. Now, while it's still simple to add a resource to the reservation using this method, reserving an individual resource could get a bit tricky if there is a large number of resources of that type, or if the resources under this type are really heavily allocated, so if there's not tons of availability. All right, additionally, when patrons are reserving by ID, they may unintentionally or accidentally add a resource that is unavailable for their selected time of their reservation. And you can see that this lens is currently unavailable. Now, this issue is minimized with the RRT module, since web checkout will only need to ensure that at least one resource of that type is available within that start and end time, rather than that specific item being available within that start and end time. Now, I do want to point out that even with the RRT module, each checkout center can still determine how patrons select resources within the Patron Portal using that setting we saw earlier. So this Patron Portal resource selection mode setting. Now, checkout centers will have 3 options to choose from with the RRT module. They will have RRT only, individual resources only, and RRT and individual resources only. RRT only will only allow patrons to use that reserve one of that type option that we saw during when we made our first reservation in the Patron Portal. And you'll notice with this option that the add button for individual resources will not display, providing a simplified selection option within Patron Portal. Additionally, this allows operators in web checkout to grab any resource of that type to fulfill those RRT reservations. And this really creates a much quicker pickup process, since operators do not have to look for a specific item under that type. They can just grab any item of that type. So the next option we have is individual resources only. This will provide that add option for each resource, which you can see up on the Patron Portal right now. So right over here. So with the individual resources only, that add button is the only option that will display for each resource. And this is the default option without the RRT module. And you'll notice with this option, you can only add individual resources. There is no option to add by resource type. Now, the final option we have is RRT and individual resources. This will provide both the reserve one of this type and the add button, allowing patrons to reserve either an individual resource or by resource type. All right. Now, in addition to that resource selection mode setting and having more than one option, the other major benefit of using RRT in Patron Portal includes the ability to utilize fallback types. All right, so let's go ahead and show some of our fallback types in Patron Portal. So we're going to do the same thing, but this time we are going to reserve one of our cameras. All right, so I'm adding a camera to my cart and we're navigating back to our cart. So fallback types are similar resource types that Patron Portal can suggest when all other items of that type are unavailable during the start and end time. Fallback types will display when the patron selects that check for replacement option within the Patron Portal. So these are the fallback types, and I was able to see that by selecting check for replacement. So fallback types will only display within the Patron Portal with the RRT module. If the instance does not have the RRT module, that check for replacement button will still display, but web checkout will only check for resources within that type that are available during the start and end times. So you can just see an example of web checkout showing individual resources that are available within that start and end time. Now, we can add fallback types within web checkout, and we would add those within the resource type detail screen. So I'm going to start in the resource types menu. We're going to look for our Canon 5D. And to add fallback types, we'll add in the admin tab and we'll scroll down to this fallback type section. All right, to add a new fallback type, we'll type in the name of the resource types that we want Patron Portal to suggest as a replacement, and then select from the list of like matches. So if I also want to add Pentex in as a fallback type, I would literally type the name into this add fallback types field and select from the list of like matches to add. All right, so we discussed our 2 key reasons for why you would want to use RRT to optimize Patron Portal, including an easier method for creating a reservation by type, and also for adding in those fallback types into Patron Portal. So now that we see why you would want to use RRT with Patron Portal, let's see how we can use RRT to help improve the actual pickup process. All right, so I'm going to navigate this time back over to my slides, and we're talking about our pickup options with RRT. Now, simply put, RRT will allow you to better define your checkout center's reservation pickup process with some additional settings. So there's going to be more settings to better define your pickup process. Additionally, the pickup process is improved simply because reserving a resource by resource type allows that operator the flexibility to select any available resource of that type off of the shelf and assign it to that reservation. All right, so let's discuss what the reservation pickup process looks like without RRT, and then we'll compare it to what it could look like with RRT. All right, without RRT, your checkout center really has 2 available pickup processes. So we have the standard default pickup option, which we'll show first, which uses just a pickup button to pick up all items, or you can require the operator to scan the barcode or enter in that complete resource ID to pick up all items within that reservation. Now, these 2 options that we are going to be covering today do not apply to creating a checkout, and that is a different process that we will not be covering today. However, if you do need assistance fine-tuning your checkout process or to dive deeper into some of the reservation pickup options we are discussing today, please be sure to reach out to your account manager so you can discuss some training options to really fine-tune your processes in your checkout center. All right, now as a quick reminder, before we can actually pick up a reservation, that reservation does need to be created. Now, without the RRT module, that reservation is always made for an individual resource, so a specific resource ID, not for resource types. Now, the first option we'll see in action is the standard pickup option in web checkout. And this is without RRT, reserved by ID. So I'm navigating back to web checkout. I'm navigating back to the home screen, and we're going to pick up this allocation for Hank to get started. So I'm going to click on the CKID to open up the allocation detail screen. And with this standard pickup option, to pick up the reservation, the operator simply needs to navigate to the correct reservation and select this yellow pickup button. That's all we're going to do for this pickup process. And that's it. It's super simple, but it can leave a bit of room for error since there is no actual step to check that the reserved resources, which you can see listed right here, are actually physically leaving with the patron. All right, now the second pickup option that we have available without RRT does require the operator to scan the barcode or enter in the exact resource ID for pickup. So there's a few more checks throughout that pickup process. So let's adjust our settings to review our second pickup option. So we're going to navigate to Admin, Checkout Center, and over to the Operations tab. So anytime we adjust the pickup process, we will adjust these settings found under the Checkout Center Operations tab, and we'll review and define each of these settings a bit later. So to require a barcode scan at pickup, I am going to enable this setting, require scan to pickup, right here. And I'm also going to update our default allocation mode from timeline scheduler to shopping cart. And it looks like I already did that. We do recommend shopping cart for those checkout centers who rely heavily on a barcode scanner, especially on pickup and return. All right, now let's pick up a similar reservation to see how this process now differs. So I'm navigating back to the front page. And this time we're going to pick up this allocation for Ron Weasley. So we're going to click on the CKID to navigate to the allocation details screen. And with the require scan to pick up setting enabled, we will still select this yellow pickup button. However, now operators will be required to scan a barcode or enter in an exact resource ID into this ID barcode of outgoing resources field for each and every resource on the reservation to confirm the pickup. All right, so let me get my barcodes ready to go. And I'm going to start by just scanning a few items, and you can include multiple barcodes at once, separated by a line break. All right, so you'll notice that as I scan barcodes, that the resources I have scanned are now highlighted in green, whereas the resources I have not scanned the barcode for are still highlighted in red. So we have to scan all of the barcodes in order to complete this checkout or pick up this reservation rather. All right, so I'm grabbing my final barcodes, placing them into the ID barcode of outgoing resources field, and selecting accept barcodes. So once all barcodes are scanned on this left-hand panel, you'll see that the Save Checkout button will appear, and we'll select Save Checkout to confirm the pickup. All right, so while this option does include a few more checks to really ensure that those reserved resources are actually leaving with the patron, it could create a lengthy pickup process, especially if you have reservations that include 50 to 100 resources. All right, so now that we understand the two standard pickup options, let's see how we can improve this process with the RRT module. All right, so you should see my slides being displayed up on the screen now. All right, now with the RRT module, you can still use those two standard pickup methods that we just took a look at the beginning of our session. However, there's a few additional options which we're going to discuss today. And there's additional options as well that we're not going to discuss. So there's quite a few different processes to pick up your resources you can use with the RRT module. So the pickup options we will highlight today include first option number 3, where the operator pre-packs resources by scanning barcodes, and then they perform a simple pickup by clicking that pickup button. So they scan barcodes to pre-pack, and then when the patron comes in, they complete a simple pickup using that pickup button. And this is one of the most popular pickup methods for most of my clients that use RRT. Most clients prefer to pre-pack and scan a barcode when they pre-pack and use that simple pickup method when the patron is there at the checkout center. The next pickup option we're going to review is where the operator still pre-packs those resources and they scan a barcode to pre-pack each of those items. And then the operator scans the barcode a second time at the actual point of pickup to confirm that those items included on the reservation are actually going out with the patron. So basically verifying that the items are going out. And the final pickup option that we're going to review today is going to be almost opposite. So with the final pickup option we'll review today, web checkout will actually select the appropriate resources of that type to fulfill those RRT reservations. And then the operator can either perform a simple pickup or scan the barcodes when they're picking up resources. So essentially, you'll have the ease of creating a reservation by type. Web checkout would still select the appropriate resource, but then the operator can scan the barcode at either pickup or complete a simple pickup. Now, just as a quick reminder, with these 3 pickup options that we're about to review, the assumption is that these resources are being reserved by resource type. They are not being reserved by an individual resource. All right, so let's start by reviewing pickup option number 3, since we already reviewed pickup option 1 and 2. And this is where the operator will pre-pack resources by scanning barcodes ahead of time and perform a simple pickup. So we'll start first by altering those checkout center operation settings. So we're navigating back to web checkout. And I just use this hyperlink at the bottom, this breadcrumb, to navigate back to my operations tab. And for this pickup option, we will disable that require scan to pickup setting. And we're also going to disable allow RRT pickup. And we also want to make sure we save our changes. It's always important. All right, now let's actually go ahead and start our pickup process, which starts by pre-packing that reservation. All right, so we've started our day. We can see that we have 3 reservations scheduled to go out, and we want to pre-pack them so we are ready to go. So we're going to click on that CKID to navigate to that allocation detail screen. And with this option, we will start by pre-packing our order ahead of time with the operator selecting any available resource of that type off of the shelf. Now you'll notice that on this allocation, there is no pickup button that actually displays on this allocation because we adjusted our settings. With the settings we have enabled, the pickup button only displays after an operator has pre-packed or assigned a resource ID to each of these items reserved by type. Now to pre-pack, the operator will scan the resources barcode or enter in the exact resource ID into this ID barcode of outgoing resources field. So I'm going to grab my barcodes, one moment. And we'll just scan a few. Now you'll notice that as I scan the barcodes, the exact resource ID now displays on the list to signify that these have been pre-packed, rather than the items that are still reserved by type, which show that a resource of that type is still reserved. So when you scan that barcode to assign an exact resource ID to those types, that basically places those items into this reservation so they are packed or marked for use for this specific reservation. All right, let's continue scanning our barcodes. All right. So now that we have pre-packed our reservation, we can actually set these items aside for when the patron physically walks into our checkout center to pick up their gear. So we're just going to save the reservation to save our changes. And we'll go back to the front page if we wanted to continue working. And once the patron actually comes in to pick up their reservation, we can proceed with the pickup. Now, I personally like to scan the patron barcode into this person resource allocation field whenever patrons walk into my training checkout center. So we'll scan that patron's barcode. All right, this is Bob Kelso. He's ready to pick up the reservation we just pre-packed. So we're going to click on the CKID, navigate to the allocation details screen, and now you'll notice that the pickup button now displays on this allocation. And it appears because we've pre-packed that reservation. We put in the work for this reservation so we can pick up. All right, now to pick up, we can simply select the pickup button and confidently hand those resources off to the patron. All right, so once again, this is a really popular pickup method for a lot of clients with RRT. Now let's review the second pickup option we can use with RRT. And we're looking at option number 4 this time. So this pickup option takes the pickup option we just reviewed, but adds a second barcode scan requirement when the resources are actually physically being picked up. Now, this can be used to verify with the patron that the selected resources are actually being handed over. So let's adjust our settings and review this pickup option. All right, so I'm navigating back into web checkout. We're going back to our Checkout Center Operations tab. And for this, we will enable Require Scan to Pick Up again. And we're going to leave that Allow RRT Pickup setting disabled. And as always, we'll save our changes. All right, now let's pick up a reservation again. This time we're going to pre-pack our reservation for Jesse. So we're going to click on the CKID. And with this option, we will again be pre-packing our order ahead of time to select the specific resources to fulfill these items reserved by type. So once again, you'll notice that the pickup option still does not display prior to pre-packing this reservation. Now with that Allow RRT Pickup setting disabled, that pickup button only displays after the operator has pre-packed the reservation and assigned an exact resource to those items reserved by type. And as a reminder to pre-pack, the operator can grab any resource of that type off of the shelf that is openly available at the checkout center and scan the barcode of that item or enter the exact resource ID into this field right here. All right, this time I'm going to scan all of our barcodes just to expedite this process. All right, so now that we have pre-packed our reservations, once again, the resources can be set aside until the patron is actually ready to come pick up their gear. All right, so we've pre-packed. We'll go back to our front page and continue working. And once that patron is at your checkout center, we can scan that patron's barcode and proceed with picking up the reservation. All right, so Jesse is here to pick up his gear. We've scanned his barcode. We verified his identity. So we'll say, sure, Jesse, you can have our gear. So we'll click on the CKID. And you will notice that the pickup button now appears because we've pre-packed once again. However, this time when we select pickup, this will load the allocation detail screen, and the operator will be required to scan the barcode or enter in that exact resource ID once again, just to verify that those items are actually being handed off. And I'm going to use batch mode to scan in multiple barcodes or all barcodes at once, since we understand how these red and green highlights work. All right. Perfect. So now that I've scanned my barcodes, this yellow Save Checkout button will appear on the left-hand panel, and I can select Save Checkout to confirm the checkout and hand the resources off to the patron. All right, now if your goal is to organize equipment ahead of time, but you also want to verify at the point of pickup that all resources actually make their way into the hands of the patron, this may be a good option for you to consider. All right, now let's take a look at the final pickup method we will look at today. And this is option number 5. So with this pickup option, web checkout will select the appropriate resource of that type that fits within the schedule of allocated resources. This pickup option is best for typically high volume checkout centers with limited resources, because web checkout selects the items based on fit with that schedule. Now, after web checkout designates the appropriate resource, the operator will then be required to grab those items and either perform a simple pickup, or my preferred method is for that operator to scan the barcode or enter in that exact resource ID of that resource to really ensure that the correct resource is being handed over to the patron. So basically, web checkout will manage the schedules of your resources and tell the operator which resource they should grab for that reservation. All right, so once again, we're going to adjust our settings in web checkout. And this is found under the Checkout Center Operations tab. And for this pickup process, we're actually going to keep most of our settings the same, but the key setting you want to ensure is enabled is this allow RRT auto assignment setting. And this will allow web checkout to select the appropriate resource to fulfill the RRT reservations. We'll show you how to do that as we're picking up. So now, in order to force a barcode scan at pickup, we'll also want to ensure that this require scan to pickup setting is enabled. And also we'll need to still ensure that allow RRT pickup remains disabled. All right, now let's go ahead and pick up our reservation. So I'm navigating back to the front page and we're picking up our final allocation. So we're clicking on the CKID. And this option, once again, does not require the operator to scan the barcodes or enter in the resource ID prior to pre-packing. Rather, that pre-packing step just occurs by the operator selecting this convert to ID button or these individual convert to ID buttons. Additionally, I do want to point out that this pickup button still does not display until all of these items have been converted to ID. All right, so let's convert a few items to ID and see which resources web checkout selects. All right, so you'll notice that the same way that web checkout displayed an individual ID when we scanned barcodes, that once we convert to ID, web checkout displays those individual resource IDs and items are no longer listed as a resource of type. Now, the resource ID that displays here is the resource that web checkout has selected to fulfill that reservation based on the current allocation schedules. All right, we're going to convert all to ID to proceed with our pickup. All right, so now we have all of the items that should be on that reservation. We could, once we have these items converted, we can save the reservation to then print the agreement form or generate a pick list. But we're going to proceed with a pickup by clicking this yellow pickup button. All right, now when we select pickup, web checkout will load the allocation detail screen. And because we require that barcode scan, web checkout will require that all barcodes or resource IDs are entered into this ID barcode of outgoing resources field. All right, and I'm going to grab my resource IDs from the allocation detail screen to ensure that I have an exact match. So I'm just typing these in or accidentally clicking on the resource ID. Thank you all so much for your patience. All right, let's grab our second resource ID. All right, and our third and final resource ID. All right, so now that we have verified that we have the correct resources, either by scanning that barcode or entering that resource ID, we can select Save Changes or Save Checkout and hand those resources off to the patron. All right, so now that we have reviewed how you can improve the pickup process with the RRT module with some additional settings, let's review the pickup settings that we use today so you better understand these. All right, now as a quick reminder, all of these pickup settings that we adjusted today are found in the Checkout Center Operations tab, which you can find by selecting Admin, Checkout Center, and that Operations tab. Now the settings that affect our pickup process include require scan to pick up, allow RRT pickup, and allow RRT auto assignment. So let's define each of these. So first we have require scan to pick up. This setting, when enabled, will require operators to scan the barcode or enter in an exact resource ID to pick up that resource. And this setting must be enabled in order for you to see this screen with the green and red highlights on the resources, just like you see on this screenshot. Now, one thing I do want to clarify is that this setting does not require a barcode scan to pre-pack orders. This setting specifically requires that barcode scans occur after pickup is selected. All right, next we have allow RRT pickup. So today, all of our pickup options with RRT actually all had allow RRT pickup disabled. With this setting disabled, it prevents operators from picking up a reservation created using RRT until specific resources have been assigned to those items reserved by type. So it essentially enforces a pre-packing process. Now you'll notice that on this screenshot, there is literally no pickup button available because these resources are still reserved by type. With allow RRT pickup enabled, operators will be able to pick up a reservation that has not yet been assigned a specific resource and is still reserved by type. So you'll notice on this screenshot, there is a pickup option. Items are reserved by type. That is with allow RRT pickup enabled. You'll notice after selecting pickup, web checkout will either automatically assign resources to those resources reserved by type or require an operator to scan barcodes or enter in the exact resource ID of the resources that they selected to complete the pickup. If that pickup option was not discussed today, however, if you are interested in learning more about these processes, please contact your account manager. All right, now the final setting we're going to discuss today is allow RRT auto assignment. So when this is enabled, this will display those convert to ID buttons on the allocation contents tab. So you can see those highlighted up on this screen right now. Operators can select these buttons to allow web checkout to choose a resource to fulfill those RRT reservations. And when this setting is enabled, these buttons do not display in the contents tab. So it really forces the operator to use this ID barcode of outgoing resources field to scan in barcodes or enter resource IDs during their pre-packing process. All right, so now that we have defined each of these settings, please keep in mind that different setting combinations of each of these will need to be enabled and disabled in order for you to fully define your pickup workflow. So we do outline different setting combinations in our documentation. And if you have questions about which settings your checkout center should enable, once again, please reach out to your account manager or to web checkout support, and we would be happy to assist. All right. So now that we've discussed RRT, what RRT is and why checkout centers should consider using RRT, we're going to talk about containers and bundles. All right, so we'll begin first by revisiting and better defining containers and bundles so you understand exactly what I'm talking about. Next, we'll discuss why you should use containers and bundles and when it's most appropriate to use one over the other. And finally, we'll review how to create containers and bundles in web checkout. So we'll end our session by showing you how to create these. All right, so let's define containers and bundles to get started. Now, both containers and bundles, once again, provide ways to circulate items together. Containers come standard in web checkout and allow you to tie specific resources together within a container as a kit in web checkout. And with containers, multiple resources are assigned to this container resource. So photo kit 1 includes DSLR, tripod, and lens 1, just like you can see in my example. Now you'll notice that these are specific resources. These are not resource types that are assigned together. So let's take a look at a kit in web checkout so that you folks can compare. So I'm going back to our timeline scheduler so we can take a look. All right, and I'm navigating to my digital cameras. I'm going to drill down to my Sony PXW cameras. All right, now you can see each of these 3 Sony PXWs are containers in web checkout. And when a container is circulated, it is checked out or reserved as a single item or a kit, if you will. So if I double click, you can see that one item is added to my selected resources. Now you'll notice that on the timeline as well, when I hover my mouse over any of these containers of contained resources also does display. So right, this is a container, kind of circulates as one single package or kit, if you will. Now let's go ahead and compare that to bundles. All right, now bundles over here. Bundles use RRT to add multiple resource types to an allocation with a single click. Bundles require both the RRT module and the bundles module. One key difference here is that containers include specific resources and bundles include resource types. Now, as you can see on this example slide, a photo bundle would reserve each item within the kit using RRT. So that a DSLR, a tripod, and a lens would all be reserved independently by resource type. So rather than reserving a single kit, by adding a bundle, you would reserve a resource of the type DSLR, a resource of the type tripod, and a resource of the type lens. Now to further illustrate that, let's take a look at how a bundle looks in the timeline scheduler. So I'm going to navigate into web checkout, and we're going to take a look at one of our lens bundles. All right, so I have a lens bundle, and when I double click to add, you'll notice that each item within the bundle is added individually using resource type. So you will see multiple lenses of different focal lengths, all added being reserved by type. These are all items that belong in that E-mount lens bundle. You'll notice, however, when I added that container, which is this Sony PXW kit right here, that a single item was added, whereas the bundle added multiple items by resource type. All right. Now that we have discussed exactly what bundles and containers are, let's discuss why you should use them and when it's most appropriate to use one over the other. All right. So why should you use a container? You should use containers when resources are not reserved independently outside of a kit. Containers include all resources together and will force them to always be circulated together. Resources that are physically fixed together and that should not be reserved independently may also be more appropriate to add as a container in web checkout. This allows you to still individually inventory each item, but ensure that they are always circulated together. Now, finally, I would recommend using containers if the checkout center wants to require a barcode scan at either pickup or return, but only wants to scan a single barcode to represent that entire kit. So please note, even though we're scanning one barcode to pick up or return, this still allows web checkout to individually inventory each resource in a kit and also maintain records properly. So you could remove an item from a kit, offline it, create a ticket for it, etc. All right, now let's discuss why you should use bundles rather than containers. Now, bundles allow for a bit more flexibility when reserving these resources. If resources can be reserved, part as part of a larger kit or multiple kits, as well as independently, you should use bundles. Furthermore, if you still will only use bundles for your more standard kits, but you tend to swap items in those kits pretty frequently, I would probably recommend using bundles over a container. So while you can always edit a container in the resource detail screen, bundles allow you to swap resources in the kit on the fly during the actual pickup process. Now, finally, I would recommend using bundles instead of containers if the checkout center requires a barcode scan at pickup, return, or while pre-packing those items, and you still want to scan the barcode for each resource in the kit. All right, so now that we better understand when to use containers and bundles, let's review how to actually use within web checkout. So I have the steps included on our slides here today. So creating a container requires just 2 simple steps. First, we'll create resources that we want to include within the container. Then we'll actually contain those resources to create a kit. So there's 2 key steps. You're going to add resources and types, and then you'll actually contain those resources. Now, both of these steps can be done manually or via import. So keep that in mind. You can import kits. You can also create them manually. Since we are a little bit short on time, we're going to skip over how to create a container, and we're going to move along down to creating a bundle since we're running a little short on time. And it looks like we have some questions in the chat. So let's move along and review how to create a bundle. So there's going to be 3 steps when you create a bundle. So 3 key steps. First, we'll add our resources and types. So your actual inventory that should be included in the bundle, whether that includes cameras or lenses. After you've added your inventory, number 2, you'll create a bundle resource type. Now, both step 1 and 2, adding your actual inventory, resources, and types, and creating that bundle type, both of those steps can be completed both either manually or via import. But this 3rd and final step, bundling resources, this must be done manually in web checkout, and it must be done using the bundles tab in the resource type detail screen. So since we are running short on time, let's go ahead and just create a bundle today. And that way we can take a look at some of these questions. All right, and we're going to go ahead and create a bundle just by adding some different items. So let's take a look at our steps. First, we want to add in our resources and types. And as you can see, I've already included my inventory in web checkout. You can also create resources and types manually using the new resource and new resource type options found here. So we're going to create an example, just like you see right here. Actually, let's just grab our gear since we're running short on time, and we'll start by creating a bundle resource type. So I'm going to select resources and new resource type, and we're going to call this our user symposium bundle. And we'll give that bundle a unique resource ID. And I always like to add dates to ensure that my resource ID is unique. And I'm going to select submit. So once again, we've created our bundle resource type, and then we're going to click on the bundles tab. Now it's very important that you add a brand new resource type that does not contain any resources. This is essential because if you were to navigate to a different resource type, such as, let's say, our Canon 7D, actually this has resources. Let's go back to our Sony PXW FS7 body kit. You will notice that because resources are assigned, there will be no option to create a bundle. So we do have to create that brand new bundle. All right, so I'm navigating back to our user symposium bundle. And here we can add our bundle type. So I'm going to add that Sony PXW body kit. So you can add kits or containers into your bundles. You can also add different items such as tripods. You could add lenses, and you can add multiple items of the same type. You would just type in those items multiple times. All right, so we've built our bundle. So let's go ahead and take a look at our bundle within the timeline scheduler. All right, I'm going to reset. And we are going to add in our patron. And here is our user symposium bundle right here. When we double click to add, we should see 2 of those lenses, that Sony PXW body kit, as well as that tripod that we've added to the bundle. All right, now let's go ahead and complete our session by just reviewing a few additional considerations you'll want to keep in mind with our RTN bundles. So resource and resource type is organization. Resource type organization is super important for our RTN bundles. So resource type should only contain resources that are interchangeable. This is really important if users are reserving by type rather than an individual ID. Resources should also be assigned to the proper type when you are using our RTN bundles in order for these to function properly. That web checkout doesn't choose an item that doesn't technically belong in that type. Now, resource type additional information should also be included for patron portal. So resource type description should really be used to provide additional information about resources assigned to the type. And for bundles, I recommend including a list of items included in that bundle. And additionally, patron portal visibility can be used to manage whether specific resource types within that bundle should be reserved independently of the bundle within patron portal. And then finally, when you are creating bundles, it is very important to be mindful of authorizations and certifications when creating those bundles, because in order to reserve all resource types within the bundle, a patron must be authorized or certified to use each type. All right, so it looks like we had quite a few questions in our chat. So let's go ahead and take a look.
Yeah, so Brittany, Julia asked if the auto-assigned resource is unavailable after conversion, like perhaps if it was misplaced or unable to be physically found in the moment, would an operator be able to remove it and scan in a different resource of the same type?
That's a great question. Yes, you can convert that item back to RRT, and then I would recommend scanning in the barcode or entering the resource ID of the item that you would prefer. Since you're changing the method, you're saying, I select this one. I hope that answers your question, Julia. If it does not, please let me know.
And then Dawn also noted just about ensuring that their institution is able to see those red and green color labels. Do you mind, Brittany, just speaking to how someone can ensure that they're going to be able to see those red and green color labels?
Yeah, so we were talking about, let me go to this slide to make sure we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about this screen right here. This is what we want to see. Is that correct? Or when it loads, this screen, is that correct?
I believe
Yes.
that's right, Dawn.
Yep.
Yeah, perfect.
All right, perfect. So in order to see this screen, it does require that your checkout center enables this setting under the operations tab, require scan to pick up. That must be enabled in order to see that screen with that green and red highlights. So it's a requirement to scan after the pickup button is selected. And
So there's no option to see that when they're initially scanning the items to prepare for the pickup?
Unfortunately, when you're pre-packing or scanning those items to convert from RRT to ID, those red and green highlights do not appear, but I think that's great feedback that we can include in a feature request.
Okay, thank you.
So you like these green and red highlights, and you would honestly prefer to see them not only when you're scanning a barcode, but when you're converting items from RRT to ID as part of your pre-packing process. Is that correct?
Correct. I mean, even if it was just red to show us which ones need to be scanned yet, would be great. When we have very large pickups for classes with 100 to 200 items on them, we will sometimes be scrolling through trying to figure out which items we have not scanned in yet that we missed.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense to me. And that's honestly really great feedback. And I'd be happy to submit that on your.
Yeah, I'd second
Yeah.
that just to chime in because it helps the operators.
Yeah, that would be great. And it looks like Ryan over at Ithaca really likes the color coding as well as Migdio. Yeah, we'd be happy to add you all to the feature request for that. AJ, if you haven't already, would you mind noting the clients in the chat that are requesting this feature to make sure we add them to that feature request, please?
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you. And it looks like Migdio has a question about the version that is required for this require scan to pick up option. It's been around for quite a while. Let's see if I can find it. All right, while I'm looking at that, I'll confirm Migdio that version. I'm taking a look right now. It looks like most in the chat, everyone just wants to be added to that feature request, requesting these green and yellow highlights during that pre-pack process. So you all like that visual representation. Totally valid. I get it. I need visuals as well. That's why I have a lot of visuals in my presentation. All right, this requires scan to pick up. Marilyn, I know is available on your version. Migdio, we would need to check your version. I'm not sure which version you're on off the top of my head. Version 12 that requires scan to pick up setting should be available on your instance then. All right. Perfect. We're right at 4 o'clock, and I know I promised to get you folks out of here right on time. Are there any questions or concerns before we wrap up today?
I had one question about the bundles versus the containers.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of the bundle because I like that it's modular. It seems more modular. We have like camera kits here that we check out, and right now that we're using containers for that. So I guess I'm just wondering what's the advantage really of, I mean, because I saw that you have to scan each item individually for a bundle.
You got it.
But I like the idea of things being more modular and like, 'cause sometimes we have to switch stuff in containers out, and you know, it can be a kind of a pain sometimes, you know, to have to switch that stuff out. Sometimes it actually doesn't really work very well for me. So I'm just trying to figure out if that would be something that would be a solution for that.
Yeah, so it sounds like, just to make sure I'm understanding your question, you currently use containers, is that correct, for your kits?
Yes, that's correct.
Got it. And it sounds like you swap items out on the fly. That's something that happens pretty frequently when you're picking up. It also sounds like you would prefer to scan the barcode of each item within your kit. Did I hear that correctly? All right. I'm going to assume I heard you correctly. So if you do prefer to scan the barcode for each item within your kit, and you want those kits to be a little bit more flexible, I would probably recommend bundles. If you're interested in a more complete demo, please reach out to your account manager and we'd be happy to kind of build some samples to show you based on your equipment. All right, it looks like we are ending just a few moments late, so thank you folks for sticking with me. Before we wrap up today, I just want to thank you all so much for joining today. We really do appreciate everyone's participation throughout the day. We wouldn't be here without you, so I do really appreciate all of the feedback and thoughtful conversation throughout our day today. So I want to wrap up the day by highlighting some sales promotions that we have and by reviewing tomorrow's session so you know what to expect. So in honor of our user symposium, we do have several promotions, which we will be offering until September 30th. So we're going to be offering 20% off of the green lighting module and then 20% off of our RTN bundles, which are the modules I highlighted today. And additionally, we will be extending our move to hosted promotion, which includes 6 months of free hosting when you sign a 1-year contract for hosting. So if you are interested in taking advantage of any of these promotions, please be sure to contact your account manager. We'll likely be talking about this again tomorrow. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about our sessions tomorrow so you know what to expect. So we'll be starting again tomorrow at 11 a.m. Central Time. That's 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific Time. And we will begin our session tomorrow with AJ. He's going to be reviewing Advanced Imports Essentials. At 12 o'clock p.m., Nicole Mildner from our technical support team will be reviewing some tips you can use to help our support team provide better and faster solutions. And then at 1:30 p.m., we will be hosting an activity where we will split up into breakout sessions to better introduce you into the Web Checkout Collective, which is that community site that we talked about today. And then at 3:30, we're going to close out our user symposium with some closing remarks. So once again, thank you all so much for joining our session today. We do really appreciate all of the lively feedback and conversation. But I hope you folks have a great evening and thank you so much for your time. All right, bye now. Have a great evening. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Bye.